Hello, in this part we're going to create digital asset and also add some of the instancing. Now here currently this is the network where I left off, and I'm going to make a digital asset first. So here this is where it all started, so I will select everything here except of course from that desert terrain. I'm going to press Shift C. You can of course always click here the zip network if you want to. And now this will be the base setup. So I have my terrain, and now I will have an asset for scattering and splitting. So create digital asset or the version digital asset. So let's call this desert split and scatter. Continue. And I'm gonna save it in the default. Now now I have my HDA. We can already add some parameters, or let me first do the instancing so we don't have to worry about that anymore. So let's subtract some instances. Maybe I create a null node, and let's see. I can already see that this is for my cliff, so I'm gonna grab here the point clouds and just gonna call this for the cliffs. So cliffs. Now I'm gonna copy paste another one. Then this was probably for the rocks. I'm gonna call it rocks. Then here we have the foliage. So foliage. And then we have one more, and that is this one. And that is for the sci-fi props. So these are my 4 instances. So some of you might already be familiar with how this approach goes. So we're going to create an attribute that says Unreal Instance, and we're going to assign that to the right instancing slot. So in this case, we need to assign 2 instances because we will have 2 here models. So we're going to use some lab nodes, which is called attributes value replacement. So here, value replace. And now instead of the name here, I want to remove that, and I want to add the variant tag. Now when we press then the button initialize, it will automatically gather all the possibilities that the variant has. So in this case it's either 0 or 1. And I want to replace this then by the path to my model. So here I am in Unreal, and to get a model we can, for example, here use this cliff. So this is the same cliff that I have currently in my Houdini as well. So I'm going to right click, I'm going to copy the reference, and I'm going to go back to Houdini. And in Houdini, I can now paste the reference over here. So we have basically linked it. And now we can do the same for the other one. So here I have the other rock. So I'm going to right click, copy a reference, go back to Houdini, paste the reference over here. So now both of these are assigned, and now let's double check it in the spreadsheet. So I'm going to look for something called variant. It's here at the last thing. And I can still see that they are using the 0 and 1 values. So the reason for that is because the original variant attribute, so if I hold middle mouse button and look for variant, this is an integer. But now suddenly I want to assign a string. So I'm assigning to an integer and I want to convert it to a string. So the node value replace does not take that into account. So we need to, before doing the replace, we actually need to place a wrangle, and we need to use a function to convert the int to a string. So I want a string that is called name that is equal to the variant. So we're going to first use the function, so it's called it_oi, and in there we're going to just say add variant. So now we here have a name with a string value. And we can double check that here, so we can look for this. And now this has a string. So instead of using then the variant, let's just plug in name you can see that this automatically works. So very important to know with what type of data you're working with, because we cannot simply transfer integers to string and so on. We need to keep that in mind. Now, furthermore, I actually want to rename this, so rename attributes, and this is then Unreal instance. So this will jump from another place, and as you can see, we now have that here. So Unreal instance. Now, next up are these rocks. So in this case, we already have some basic attributes. And what I would like to do here with the rocks is assign multiple rocks that I have in my project. So I'm going to bring a randomizer, so attribute random. And in there, we're going to give this a name, Unreal instance. And we are going to create a custom discrete. So click on that. And now we can basically fill in custom values, and we need to fill in string values. So in here, I can then do the path to the rocks. So I can have, for example, 4 different rocks, or if I want more, I can just add them. If I want less, I can remove them. We can also have the weight. So if I want to have rock number 1 more, so I can just increase that. So rock number 1 will be often appearing than the other rocks. It's a really cool system here to control that. So same as before, we're going to jump in Unreal, copy paste a path and paste it in here. Now here, as you can see, I have these 6 rocks. So again, right click, copy a reference and jump into Houdini and copy paste it there. So I'm not going to repeat this for all the rocks, so I'll just like skip this part. As you can see, pasting that here. So here, as you can see, I assigned all these rocks. And then we have foliage, so we can basically do the same for the foliage. So we can copy paste the randomizer, and instead of these rocks, I'm gonna just plug in some foliage. I don't have that much foliage, so probably like 2 or 3 stuff. Then again, here I have one of my bush models. I'm gonna copy paste reference, and I'm just gonna paste it in here, of course. So I can also copy paste another model if I want that. I'm just gonna keep it with that for the moment. Then here I have my sci-fi portals. So let's rename that. And this is going to be the same way as we basically did the cliffs here. So I will copy paste it over here and click that in. So I'm going to double check here again. So we also used something called variant. And I want to then store the variant into a string value. I'm going to press initialize, and we only have 1 and 2, but I also know that I have a value 0. So in this case, in my current setup, there is actually no 0 being used. And then we're going to paste the reference here again. So to copy paste this portal, I actually made prefab, so I can drag and drop, for example, here prefab. As you can see, this is a prefab. So it already contains some basic modeling and particles and this cloth that is animated. So you can decide to, for example, generate this as well, to procedurally generate rocks and other things around this, but you can also just use like a prefab as I did here. So it's up to you what is the best way for your project. So you don't have to do every single aspect procedurally. You can still use some prefabs made by artists. So we can right click on this and copy a reference. So it's the same as any other model, and we can also do that with prefabs or blueprints. And I know that this is for my first model, so I'm going to assign that here, and I'm going to do it for the other ones as well. So that's all set up here as well. Now let's merge these nodes together. So I'm going to select them all, hold the Alt key, merge them. And now we have all the instances. Now there's something important that I want to double check with instancing. So I'm gonna hold the mouse and I want to see where the warnings are. So the warnings are with the attribute variant, follow, and footprint. And that's okay. So often what I would look for warnings are For example, the normal, orientation, scaling, p-scaling, and so on. So these are very important attributes to look out for. But in this case, variant, fall-off, and footprint are not that important. Now, one more other thing I want to say here is currently all my outputs are having a orientation. So they have an orientation attribute, which is attribute used for rotating the model. So orientation comes before the normal. So Houdini will calculate first orientation and it will override the normal. So normally if orientation is not here, the normal will decide where the models or how the models will be faced or rotated. So orientation is actually better to work with. In other videos, I often use the normal, but orientation in the end of the day is sometimes the better way to save out the information. So now here, let's do one final merge, and I want to merge back my terrain. So I'm going to place a merge here. I'm going to do first my instancing and then my terrain. And I'm going to grab it from here. I don't need this other merge actually anymore. You can delete that. You can still keep that merge for visualizing prop placements and so on. But this is then my basic output, the landscape and point clouds. Now to make sure this is our output, let's place an output node. And we are almost done with this then. Now the last thing that I wanted to do here is then to create our parameters. So we're going to open the menu. Going to go to parameters and let's create some folders. So we can create multiple folders for each topic. So we, for example, did cliffs. So we can create a folder for the cliff. We can then create a folder for the rocks. We don't have one for the some of the foliage. And we also had one for then the sci-fi portal. We can also make a folder for all the instances, or we can separate it, the instances based on the parts they are. So one of the main things I always like to have here is of course the amount. So we can then go to the scatter node and then we can expose the density. So I'm going to just drag and drop the density scale in here and click apply. Now one thing to notice here is that the value is quite small. We are working on a very low value. So what I will do is I will multiply this by 0, 0, 1, and I will put this back to 1. So this will be a little bit better to work with in the game engine. Now let's look at other settings. For the cliffs, we can also here expose the mass controls if you want that. So we can really define areas where they should be placed. We can have some seed here, some of the scattering. So we're going to place the seed here. We can also make a global seed for everything at the top if you want that. So that actually might be interesting. So let's place a global seed here. I'm just going to give this the name seed. So this is sort of like my main seed value for everything. Now we can also here have some of the scaling. So we can, for example, expose minimum maximum, could be interesting. We can expose the size to get variation. So I might expose that, and I'm just going to call it scale variation. So for these tutorials, I often keep it quite simple in parameters, but you can expose as many parameters as you want. Like you can expose this whole menu for scaling if you want that, but I don't think that's necessary. So let me jump to the instancing here. So I would like to have this instancing slot here. So maybe we can also put a separator. So separate it and drag that in here. And drag the other one here. And we're just going to call this then cliff 1. And then cliff 2. So now these values are linked. Something interesting we can also do here with the new Houdini is we can assign a Unreal reference. So if I select both of them, press the plus icon and type in Unreal ref, we can just basically drag and drop models onto a string parameter. So that's something interesting later to try out. Now let's go to rocks. So again, the main thing that I want to do is the scattering. So I'm going to grab the density again. So density. And I'm just going to do the same trick and multiply this by its own value. So 0.4 and set this to 1. So it's not that super high. Then again, we can play around furthermore with other parameters, expose more. I also want to do here is then I want to add my seed value here. So I want to add my main seed value. I'm going to copy paste that for later. This is again my global seed. So if I change this value at the top, everything will have a new look. Then I'm going to go here. And if you want, we can expose all these parameters. We can either expose the whole multi-parameter, so we can drag and drop this value, or we can just expose these values. So I'm going to expose those ones. Just going to rename this. Then some of the foliage. So okay, again, same thing here. Let's grab some the density here. And again, same as before, we are working with a quite low scale. So first let's set the name here, so just density scale. Then again here we are working with a quite low scale, so I'm going to multiply that value here. And I'm going to set the value here just to 1, so we have a better slider. Again, we can also do the same here for that seed parameter. So we're just going to copy paste the seed. And then we can expose the instance. So I'm going to separate it and then the instance. So this is my push ball. Now up to the sci-fi portals. And I want to here then have the density again. So density, again, same thing as before, change name and also change the slider range. Density, and I want to multiply this by its value and then set this to a 1. Then I go to the instancing and separator, and then we can drag these instances in here. To portal 1, portal 2, and portal 3. What can sometimes happen is when I make a parameter, we have like the name of the node in front of it. So we have scatter align node 1 and then the parameter name. So if you don't want that, you can always go back up to this gear and we can disable the prefix of the parameters. So we need to disable these two toggles to not have that name of the node, so this prefix anymore. So that's how, so if you're wondering how you can do that, that's how you can do that here. So now we have this tool. So we have our base seed value. We have some settings for the cliffs, the rocks, the foliage, and our portal. So again, you can add as much parameters as you want to. I just have these basic values. So the main thing that I want to control is, of course, in my case, the density. So I can add more or less of these rocks. I can always later come back and add more. If I need, for example, something for random rotation, random scaling, I can add it as well. One more parameter that I almost forgot to expose, which is quite important, is the one at the top here. So this is the one that is slicing the terrain. So I'm going to make a new folder in here. And this is then for the slicing or splitting of the terrain. Splitting terrain. And we can use the tile counts. So we can say how many pieces we want. and the tile number and press apply. And that was it for this video. So if you want, you can start trying this out in Game Engine already. I'm not going to do that in this case. I'm just going to immediately move on to creating a Bgg network and bringing that into the game. So that will be the next video. I hope you enjoyed this video and see you on the next one.